please. So good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. It's November. And in November, it's traditional in Dharma situations to talk about gratitude. Because in November in the US, we celebrate Thanksgiving, which is my favorite holiday, actually. Canada also has a Thanksgiving, which is celebrated on the second Monday in October, which this year was on the 13th. And in a way, this makes more sense to me because I think of Thanksgiving as a harvest festival, and I think a lot of us think of it that way. But it turns out that the history and origin of Thanksgiving is much wider and broader than that. For some reason, I was, I don't know, what's the word? I decided I wanted to look into Thanksgiving and where it came from and what it was all about. So I did just a little bit of Google research, Wikipedia. Anyway, in England and Europe, Thanksgiving days were celebrated many times a year for blessings granted by God. And they could be kind of just declared somewhat at random by a priest at a church. Something good had happened in the village or the town. And so the church declared a day of Thanksgiving and they celebrated things like the end of the plague or the winning of a war, but also much more ordinary and everyday events. And I read about one town that had 67 Thanksgiving days in one year. And this was relatively common. So, it's kind of interesting to think of them giving thanks like that all the time. And so the first documented Thanksgiving in America, and it was in this European tradition, something good happened, so let's have a Thanksgiving. The first one was in 1619 in Virginia, and was not the one we know of with pilgrims and Indians having a big feast, which was celebrated in Plymouth in 1621, actually in gratitude for an especially good harvest. The first Thanksgiving in America was celebrated for some other reason. And then this connection between Thanksgiving and a good harvest was forgotten for a couple of hundred years. And the harvest was later then reappended to Thanksgiving to give a reason for the existence of the holiday once we had the holiday. So Wikipedia says, as the first president of the United States, George Washington proclaimed the first nationwide Thanksgiving celebration in America. So this is a nationwide celebration, marking November 26, 1789, as a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many and signal favors of Almighty God, and calling on Americans to unite in most humbly offering our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech him to pardon our national and other transgressions. Abraham Lincoln made it a national holiday in 1863. So that's kind of where Thanksgiving comes from. Now, I've just begun to read a little bit about American history. This is a subject I've pretty much managed to ignore since high school. And for some reason, I decided I wanted to know a little bit more. And my brother recommended an interesting book, big fat book, so I've been reading it. And it's actually kind of stunning because, at least according to what I'm learning right now, we weren't particularly founded on inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And nor were we founded on equality. We're actually founded on wealth, oppression, and genocide. Wealth through the slaves, there's the oppression, and genocide, the Native Americans or the indigenous people. It's actually pretty shocking. And I think as Buddhists, it's important to come to terms with the reality of this and begin to live differently now, knowing this as the reality of what our nation was founded upon. And by live differently now, maybe I'm pointing to taking some corrective measures. And so just as our history isn't as I thought, neither is our Thanksgiving as I thought. But anyway, here we are now. The reality of Thanksgiving is that it's a universal archetypal holiday celebrated by many, many cultures for many reasons all over the world. Now, in any case, we have our Thanksgiving, which is a full day focused on gratitude, which is why I love it. A full day where the whole nation gets to reflect on, live within, act upon gratitude. And gratitude, of course, is a quintessential Buddhist practice. We talk about it all the time. And when we practice gratitude, generosity seems to naturally arise. When we're in this mind of gratitude, doesn't it just seem that naturally we have a kind of magnanimous, generous mind? So to me, they're like two sides of the same coin. They arise together. Usually we think of gratitude as what we express when someone gives us something or is generous towards us. Now, I think I want to take a step back here, because just before our meeting started this evening, I realized that we call it Thanksgiving, and thanks is gratitude and giving is generosity. So there it is right there in the word. And we call it Thanksgiving because we mean we're giving thanks, right? But we're giving thanks. So actually, gratitude is already generosity because we're giving thanks. We're giving, do you see what I mean? I'm not sure I'm saying that very well. Anyway, so right there in the word is this arising of gratitude with generosity. So as I was saying, we usually think of gratitude as what we express when someone gives us something, right? We're thankful for it, or is generous towards us. But this is a kind of a dualistic way of thinking. The giver is generous to the receiver, who is grateful. But I've been thinking that perhaps we could also see the giver as grateful and the receiver as generous. The impulse towards giving is generated from gratitude, and the gratitude of the receiver is an offering of generosity. If there were no receiver, there could be no giver, and vice versa. So on Thanksgiving in the US, it's become traditional to offer food to others. So right there within our holiday of expressing gratitude, we're also expressing generosity, making offerings of food to others. And that's not just at our, celebrations where we eat a big meal together, but we make offerings of food to those who don't have enough to eat, to food banks. We participate in walks and runs for the hungry. And most cities and towns provide free Thanksgiving Day dinners to whomever wishes to come and eat them. They don't even discriminate by income. It's really kind of a beautiful practice. I'm reminded of a prayer I heard recently. I may have already told you about this prayer, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but this is a prayer I heard that a rabbi taught to a woman who had decided she needed to begin praying after her father died. So you can think of it as a starter prayer, but also as a forever prayer. Now, I'm not fond of that use of the word forever, as in forever home or best friend forever. For some reason, it makes me cringe. But anyway, this is your forever prayer. The prayer is, wow, please, thank you. Wow, please, thank you. I had to put that on my refrigerator. I just thought it was really great. What a guide for living. Okay, so the wow part is amazement and awe at this beautiful world that we are in love with, which we talked about the last time I gave a Dharma talk, being in love with our world. And so many moments in the day are actually truly incredible. I'm kind of surprised at how often I'm just stopped short by something that I'm seeing or something that's happening that's really quite amazing. I mean, even that we're here is amazing, honestly. It's just all very miraculous. And the wow includes everything. We don't leave anything out of our wow. Okay? Please. Please is really, in a Buddhist context, I think of please as the offering of merit and offerings of loving kindness and compassion. So, and again, not leaving anything out of those offerings. We offer merit to all beings in all worlds, in all times. We offer loving kindness to all beings in all worlds and all times, leaving nothing out. And to make an offering is an act of generosity. So please is really generosity. It's not, asking God to send you a bicycle for Christmas. It's an act of generosity. This offering that we're doing of merit and kindness and compassion. Thank you. So, given all that, how can we not be grateful? I mean, given all the wow moments, how can we not be grateful for everyone and everything? Have you ever tried to be grateful for things you don't like? This is something I should practice more often. Reverend Echo, when I told him I'd broken his favorite mug, said immediately without thought, "Thank you." It came right out of his mouth. I broke your favorite mug. Thank you. It was amazing. I'll never forget it. So maybe this prayer is how we begin to live differently now. I mentioned earlier that given the history of our country, we need to begin doing things a little differently at this point. So we could begin with this prayer. But I think what's key here is that we leave nothing out. We don't sort out what we like or what we think is good and leave the rest out. And leaving nothing out is generosity of spirit. I really love that phrase, generosity of spirit. And I'm going to come back to it in a second, but I have a slight detour here. Because I wanted to mention that generosity is actually the first Buddhist practice. At least, maybe I should say in Asia, it's the first Buddhist practice. It's what's taught to small children by Buddhist parents. They don't teach their children how to meditate. They teach them to be generous. And they do this at a very young age. And I was really deeply moved in Mount Shasta. We were doing alms round one day, going around the town with our alms bowls, and people were putting food into them. And this mother with a little 2-year-old or so, I don't know how old the child was, very young child, she gave the child an orange and showed the child how to offer it to us. And the child did this with such glee. And I thought, and the child didn't get anything back from us. The child just was happily giving us this orange. And I thought it was very touching to me, really touching. So I think it's interesting, or maybe valuable to consider why it is so that generosity is the first practice. Okay, back to Google AI. This is my go-to. Says generosity, or dana, is a core Buddhist practice focused on giving freely without expecting anything in return. It's a way to cultivate selflessness, compassion, and spiritual growth, and a means to overcome greed and attachment. This practice extends beyond material gifts to include giving time, energy, knowledge, protection, and love. So, that's not too bad for Google AI. In more classical Buddhist terms, as we've talked about, in the past, there are 3 gifts that can be given. Material wealth and possessions is the first. The second is the Dharma. And the third is the gift of fearlessness. And this last one, the gift of fearlessness, is considered the most important, the most valuable gift that you can give. So back to generosity of spirit. To me, generosity of spirit goes way beyond all of this to an openness and open-heartedness that encompasses all that is. This kind of wild and free open-heartedness that rejects nothing, including it includes everything, including all that we would like to leave out. So to include all that we would like to leave out. When we're not thinking of what we like and don't like, want and don't want, including being a nation founded on wealth, oppression, and genocide, but are just meeting what is in front of us, truly meeting it, knowing deeply that we are not separate from it and cannot be separate from it, and therefore are responsible for it and must love it, must embrace it, and must care for it. Generosity of spirit. And then from that comes spontaneously thanksgiving. So it's not a matter of finding amidst, the things of our day, what we can be grateful for. I'm thinking about the gratitude journal. Sit down and write before you go to bed about three things I'm grateful for: the color of fall leaves, my morning coffee, the neighbor who greeted me with a friendly smile, that kind of thing. I mean, that's wonderful and we should be grateful for it. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But real gratitude doesn't divide the world up in this way. Real gratitude is grateful for the broken mug and the broken nation and the broken world, which no longer exists as unbroken wilderness. That's my own personal grief, but is overrun with dubious civilization. So this recognition, love and gratitude for our broken world, is generosity itself. Generosity of thanksgiving. A giving thanks which does not hold back, which generously eats the whole enchilada. And one last thing. I think it's important to always remember We are big enough for that. We are big enough for that. Thank you.